This is the guy who won the Cold War and did it in a peaceful way. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, Lech Walesa, and the Pope. But it was Ronald Reagan was the leader of all that.
Welcome to Stakelbeck Tonight. I'm Erick Stakelbeck, and as I look around at the chaos in our nation and our world today, I often wonder what Ronald Reagan would do. And among Americans who lived through the 1980s and Reagan's iconic history-making presidency, I don't think I'm alone. Much like today, when Reagan took office in 1981, America faced a gathering storm of enemies led at the time by the Soviet Union. We were coming out of the Carter years with inflation, soaring gas prices, an Iranian hostage crisis, and a general feeling of low morale among the American people. Many said our nation was in decline. Then came Ronald Reagan, and everything began turning around. It's the kind of sea change we need in America once again today. And as we face the most important presidential election in American history this November, with two very different visions of where our country should be headed, we're going to take a deep dive tonight into the legacy of a man I believe was one of America's greatest commanders-in-chief, Ronald Reagan. There was a time, not so long ago, when the world teetered on the brink of nuclear war. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union was a battle not just of political ideologies, but of spiritual warfare, a clash between freedom and tyranny, light and darkness. Ronald Reagan understood this. He stood firm in his convictions, grounded in his Christian faith, believing that America had a divine purpose to stand as a beacon of hope and liberty in a world menaced by the threat of communism. He knew that the battle wasn't just against flesh and blood, but against the principalities and powers that sought to suppress freedom and faith across the globe. Today, we find ourselves yet again in a perilous time, facing global threats and radical forces within that challenge our values, our freedom, and our faith. Just as Reagan drew strength from his belief in God's guiding hand on America, we must look at our faith to navigate these uncertain times. The lessons of the past are clear and urgently relevant for us today. When we stand united under God with leaders who are guided by faith and moral clarity, we can overcome every challenge. Tonight, we're joined by two legendary Hollywood actors, Dennis Quaid and Academy Award winner Jon Voight, who bring Ronald Reagan's incredible story to life in the blockbuster new movie, Reagan. It hits theaters nationwide on August 30th, and these two film icons will share insights into the man behind the legend and how Ronald Reagan's legacy continues to resonate today. And it all starts now. Well, if you're gonna portray one of the greatest presidents in American history on screen, you've gotta have a leading man who can fill those very big shoes. Thankfully, Dennis Quaid is more than up to the task, from The Right Stuff to Great Balls of Fire, The Rookie, Midway, the list goes on. He's taken on countless iconic roles, and they don't get any more iconic than President Ronald Reagan. Dennis plays the Gipper in the great new film Reagan, and he joins us now. Dennis, first of all, congrats on the film. Hey, I know you admired President Reagan. Does that make you want to do his story justice even more as you're playing this role, especially because so many in the media and Hollywood have mischaracterized Reagan over the years?
Well, it was a daunting role to take on, just simply from the fact, well, he was my favorite president. I will say that outright. But, I had a shiver of fear go up my spine because he's like Muhammad Ali. Everybody in the world knows what he looks like, sounds like, and they're going to have an opinion about it. So there was that judgment thing I think I was, a little afraid by. And also just being able to get past, I didn't want to do an impersonation of him like Saturday Night Live. And,
Right.
I wanted to get past that public persona to find out what this real person, who he was beyond all that. And so I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no to it, and I took my time to really feel it out and think it over. And I wound up going to the Reagan Ranch, which is not open to the public. And after Reagan died, a group of friends bought that place that they called the Western White House back then. And they left it exactly as it was. Ron and Nancy's clothes are in the closet.
Wow.
It feels like they just left and they're coming back. And when I came through the gate, I could feel him. I could feel his spirit. I could feel who he was as a person. He's in, all that fencing that he did there. You could feel his presence. He dug that pond. He did all the work there himself. And they had a king-size bed, but it was two twin beds that were zip tied together.
Right.
And, a channel changer there on kaprong, and you needed 3 different remotes to operate it. And I know from Nancy about how to do that. It's, it was those simple little things. And the house is 1,100 square feet. It's a tiny place, really. But also his bookcase was there, and it was every book that he had had since he was 9 years old.
Incredible.
And that was very, very special.
Yeah, he was a student of history, so it's not surprising in that sense. And he knew the enemy. He knew what America was up against during the Cold War. In studying for this role, obviously an historic leader, a history-changing leader, what set him apart from that leadership perspective? Why was he so different?
As a leader, he operated from principles rather than from party. Those principles, they go beyond party or even what's popular today. And those are eternal, those principles. Yeah, but those are Christian principles. Those are principles from the Constitution. Those are principles that if you rely on those difficult decisions become clearer in the long run. You may not be popular sometimes, but that's what great leaders do. Sometimes they make decisions that are unpopular, but that are the best in the long run.
Yeah, Dennis, well said. And you mentioned it. Look, Reagan kind of transcended party lines in many ways. We had the Reagan Democrats. People actually left the Democrat Party to vote for Reagan. What was it about him, do you think, that made him so appealing to the American people? And why did people connect with him on that level?
Well, for one thing, Reagan was a Democrat before he was a Republican, almost as much time as he was a Republican. In fact, he switched parties in the 60s because he said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party, it left me. But it was, he was also, like I said, those principles. Half of in the second election against Mondale, half of registered Democrats voted for Ronald Reagan. I would go figure. There's never been a landslide like that.
49 states.
It was because of those principles. He appealed to everybody. Everybody felt like they knew him, they could trust him in a sense. Of course, there were those who, called him a warmonger, called him a washed up actor. This is the guy who won the Cold War and did it in a peaceful way. And, even the Russians loved it, really deep down. And in a sense, what I remember is, especially for my generation, the boomer generation, he was everybody's dad. And that could be for better or worse. You could be the son who admires your dad. You could be the son who rebels against your dad. But at the same time, your family. And I think that's really still was part of his appeal.
One of the pivotal moments in Reagan's life and his presidency, Dennis, was that attempted assassination in 1981, shortly after he took office. How did that change, and surviving that, how did that change not only the trajectory of his presidency, but the trajectory of his faith? He talked about how that incident drew him closer to God. What did you find in playing the role, the impact it had on him?
I think it was a deepening for him. It survived that. The bullet was less than an inch from his heart, and at first they were going to go back to the White House. He didn't know he'd been shot. He thought the Secret Service man had jumped up on top of him. He said, "Gosh, you hurt my ribs." It was so bad. Then he started to cough up blood. And so they went to Walter Reed Hospital, and that's what saved him. It was very, very close. We didn't know at the time, actually realize as a people until much later. But it really changed him in the fact, Tip O'Neill was like the first outside of Nancy to come visit him. His sworn enemy, the Speaker of the House, Democratic Speaker of the House, who said, you'll do anything to get this tax cut, won't you? And, he talked with Tip there, and he said he felt like this had happened, that his life was no longer his. It was for the man upstairs to do his will. And it was a deepening for him.
Yeah, and by the way, that is a very powerful scene in the film, in the hospital bed. We won't give any more away, but with Reagan and Tip O'Neill in the wake of the shooting. Hey, what did you find, Dennis, in playing the role? More about Reagan the man. Look, came from humble beginnings. That's why it's interesting that Western White House you described a moment ago, 1,100 square feet, pretty humble, but he came from humble beginnings.
He was not a rich man. No.
Exactly.
He was not a rich man. It was about public service.
Yes.
He may have made a lot of other people rich, during the economy that it came along there. But, he really, he believed in a lot more than just making money.
Yes.
He really believed in the American people and the American dream and our country.
Yeah.
It was, that was there. Little things too. Like he was an amazing athlete. All throughout his life, he was a lifeguard, and I saw him actually. I never met him, but during the '90s, after his presidency, I was playing at LA Country Club golf, and that he was on the next fairway. This guy's almost 90 years old. He could still just really hit the ball in a very athletic way.
Yeah. They said he was in great shape, and that's one of the reasons he was able to survive the bullet, actually. He was always in great shape. What about Reagan, the husband, the father? What did you learn about the man in terms of the personal life in playing this role?
As a husband, he was an incredible husband. He and Nancy, their relationship, it's really just a great example of what a relationship that like that also has God in the relationship can do, that how it brings out your best self. You can bring out your best self in each other. But along with that time was also the opportunity to become president of the Screen Actors Guild, which is not a job that actors are gunning for, by the way, but that turned out to be his entry into politics and fighting communism.
Did he get the sense, you mentioned the speeches he made at GE about communism, the Screen Actors Guild, it was all leading up to his main purpose in life, winning the Cold War. Did he get the sense that he was an historic figure, that he was put in this role for such a time as this, as the Bible would say? Did Reagan have that sense as he's shoulder to shoulder with people like Margaret Thatcher, Pope John Paul II? Did he know the importance of what he was doing and the historic magnitude of it?
I think he was so involved in the fight that he didn't think about that times. I'm sure at the end he had to, in a way, feel that he had accomplished something. But, he didn't even talk to the Soviets didn't even talk to him for the first 5 years of his presidency. He thought he had missed the moment in history. And, they kept, they kept dying on him. There was 3 went by in a year. And, and Mikhail Gorbachev coming along at the time that he did. And also the times were right. And it was Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, Lech Walesa, and the Pope, who really, I think, ended the Cold War. But it was Ronald Reagan was the leader of all that.
Yeah, Dennis, it is an awesome film. Congratulations on the film, number one. Number two, seems like you had a blast playing this role.
It did.
And this is a film for everyone, right? I think every American, any political stripe can appreciate this.
Yes, and if you were born before 1985, you'll get to see how great this country used to be. And if you're born after 1985, you can see how great this country still can be.
Amen. Well said. Dennis Quaid, the one and only. Congrats on the film, August 30th, Reagan. Dennis, God bless. Good luck with the film. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you. God bless.
Folks, we have a very special guest joining us. He's an Academy Award-winning actor with a legendary career spanning decades. And now he's stepping into the shoes of a pivotal figure in the Cold War in the great new film Reagan. The one and only Jon Voight is here. Jon, great to have you. And hey, Reagan may be set during the Cold War, but we live in very challenging times right now. Jon, do you think this film will resonate with audiences today as they watch how Reagan boldly confronted the great evil of Soviet communism, just as we face great evils in these times?
Yes, well, I think there are some parallels to be made. But this film wasn't made in terms of that. We didn't intend to have this film come out at this time. We were thinking it would come out about a year ago, and now and it's opening now, and it seems to be relevant now in many ways. The situation in the United States was pretty rough, a very tough time after the Carter administration. And Reagan came into it and turned out to be the man of the hour and a wonderful energy for the United States at that time. And this is the story of that. And right now we have some similar difficulties. And actually, the character I play is a fellow who was a spy for the Soviet Union, and he was trying to, early on in his career, he was working along with the Soviet thought of taking down the United States through various means, one of them being propaganda into our schools, into our media, into our films, and they were accomplishing a lot of that. And anyway, we see the way Reagan approached it and his career and how he eventually overcame the Soviet Union, and they disbanded because of his leadership.
Hey, talk a bit about your research for this role, a unique role, obviously, an ex-KGB agent, playing these kinds of historic roles. I guess you have to dig deep a bit with the research.
I have, and I have to say that everybody involved, Penelope and Dennis certainly did their research, and I did my research too. There's a fellow by the name of Yuri Bezmenov, who was a person who was a spy and left the Soviet Union and came to live in the United States and gave us lots of information about the Soviet plan to take down America from the 50s on, even earlier. And it's very complex stuff. They wanted to take over the universities, take God out of the schools, take over Hollywood. And it was a long plan. The first part of it would have been a 20-year plan. And it seems like they have really accomplished that, even though the Soviet Union is no more. Still, that plan has taken root in the United States.
Ronald Reagan, that kind of strong leadership seems so sorely needed in the world today, right?
Sure. Well, he was a very positive figure, gave hope to everybody, and he believed so in the United States and its founding principles, and he brought those back to us during his time. We need that now too, more than ever.
Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.